Hello everyone. So, had a good food today? Yes. How was the food? Mouth watering, right? Nice. Good. So, I think all are awake after having an amazing session by the show. Kind of similar kind of the serverless topic we're going to cover it, but little interesting, and that not based on the expertise, based on the experience what I have worked with my old startup, another startup, and how we build it all this part. So let me just. Yeah, topic is like build an MVP with a serverless for lesser cost. Okay, how many of you like saving money? I think all right. And even who are a company founder, right, they always like to save their money in each and every aspect. And everyone will agree on that part. So I'm going to talk about that aspect also. Along with that, how you can build an MVP. So more focus will be on based on the how we can build MVP and with a lesser cost. That will be more of a less cost. I will explain some of the architecture diagram which we have built and how much time we build. Took a time to build, and what are the components all across over there. So what we are going to learn today is, right, it will like MVP and fact about building MVP. So I'll share some fact about the building MVP, what is generally a concept everyone know about MVP, and what I know, what I prefer also on that part, we will talk about it. Then we'll talk about what AWS Serverless. I think Ashok has already explained a lot of AWS Serverless services. Similar kind of on the same note, we'll talk about like what serverless things which we can use to build a MVP part. And then the cost factor of the AWS serverless. So which are the serverless services provided by AWS has amazing fact to be considered while you're defining your AWS architecture, which can help you to save your cost. And then I'll present the case study which we have built as one of the startups in a previous company. Yeah, so I know it's very easy terminology for the MVP. MVP is like minimum viable product, right? So we'll talk about similar kind of note, but little different one. Okay, so M is stand for the minimum. What is the minimum is like? So minimum is like you put the less effort, you use the less resources. Okay, on that same note, you have to use the minimum things. Okay, and then you have to build the V. V is for the viable product. So when I say viable product, it's like using the less resources, using the less team member, using the less codes also, you build a product which is a viable. Viable means like shippable, which you can launch into the market. Okay, because you don't want it to be always be a perfect or 100% to launch your product. You can always go with a viable product in the market, and then you can take a feedback from the customer, and then based on the feedback from the customer, you can improvise your product by slowly. That's how exactly should work it. And that's why we call it as a MVP, is a minimum viable product. I think in current trends of serverless architectures, right, it's always after everything is moving from the on-premises to cloud, the cost factor is always be important, and we have to always be taken care of where we can save the cost apart. And that's how the serverless will going to be help in the to build that MVP part. How is going to be help the MVP, right? Because serverless is purely based on the pay-per-use model. Okay, pay-per-use means like the resources which you use only pay for that. If your resources are idle, even if you're running it, right, you don't need to pay for that. That's how the pay-per-use model works. And serverless, I think whatever the services developed by the AWS is or serverless, right, is purely based on the pay-per-use. How much you consume, only pay for that purpose. Even they have some kind of limit also. Up to that, we'll get to know that in the next couple of slides. What are the limits? Have a free tier? What are the limits? Have free request also, where we can utilize that and save the cost. We'll talk about that part. So this is kind of different version of minimum viable product, right? So it's like you build a prototype. This is like one skater, like which used for that. And when you build a prototype, it's like small architecture. Okay, my product will be like, it will have a sign up button, login button, it will have a registration form. Once it's registration, it will have some uploading document, or I'll ask some data with the customer, then my backend will process it. Kind of similar basic prototype. And once we have a prototype, we'll build a minimum viable product with the putting on some cover, putting on some coloring mechanism on that part, doing some UX part, and we'll ship that product into the market slowly like this, okay? So it is a kind of transformation from the prototype to minimal viable product to then the final product. So it's a long journey, but you can achieve that journey in a short span, like step by step, and that's how the MVP is going to be work. And I don't know how many of you are startup founder or maybe is going to be build their own product, but this is going to be helpful kind of note, right? Based on my experience, I have worked across my career in the many startups where from the starting foundation team only, where we build the product in a step by step, and we have launched products, and we did not hurry to like launch product immediately. We build small product, then release it, then get the customer feedback, come back, improve. That's how the life cycles work on it. So let's talk about the facts about building the MVP part. Focus on the core features, right? So when you're building the MVP, right, don't deviate your things while building it. I know there are a lot of fancy things happen always. Like I'll tell you an example of that part. Nowadays the trending part is ChatGPT, AI, and everything is. But I'll ask the question to you guys. Do you really need a ChatGPT AI in the first launch of your product? Can anyone answer? No. Correct. So that's how my questions answer is your that. Focus on the core feature. Like example of that, if you are building a product for the appointment, okay, what exactly is required? Appointment required like sign up form, date of the preferences, name, registration, and the mobile numbers kind of thing, like small data, right? So based on that, you can focus on the only core feature which you want to start it. Because building a brand also takes time. Once you start putting into your product into market, it will slowly become matured, and then it can focus slowly add your core features. That's how it works. That's why the main fact about it like focus on your core feature. Don't run behind the trend. Don't run behind the giving all the fancy features at the first start. Second is early and often feedback from the user. Benefit of launching MVP, I think startup founder can agree with me on that. When you launch MVP, launch on any early products, right, it's always good to get the feedback. I've seen from last couple of years in the Corona time, a lot of new products has been launched on social media, and they have asked for the feedback from the users, and based on the user, they have built a lot of good features also. One of the example I can tell you, it's a Pune-based startup that is a peer list. How many of you know about peer list? Okay, so go to the peer list. It's a social networking site called the LinkedIn, based on not exactly LinkedIn, but it's for the career building and finding the job one. They have built these products in last Corona time only, and all like features have been built based on the customer feedback. They have openly asked for the features and what feature they want, is there any improvement, is there any error. Based on that, they have slowly adding the one by one feature. Like that, they are doing it, and that's how should work it, like early and often feedback from the user. Next, be iterative and agile. I think agile is nowadays very common, and everyone is adopting agiles only. And the best part of the agile is like you can go fast also, but you can go in iterative ways also. There is a iteration by iteration you can develop and deliver your feature. That's how our sprint, iterations, story, features work. So the fact about the MVP is like you have to go in iterative mode. Like you release one cycle, next release, next release, next release. Earlier used to time when you have to different methodologies, and I think that is the waterfall model. We have to wait for a long period to build whole products and add the feature. But now to do agile, it's the beauty of agile. Like you can go iterative way to launch your products. And the last one is like not list exactly, the resources part, where you can have a less resources to use also. To build your MVP, to not to hire the large number of teams also. Even you don't need a large infrastructure also. So resources not only the infrastructure or the engineers also, right? Everything can be covered on the resources. So you can focus on the building the product, not on the scaling your company part. That's how the fact about the building the MVP. Now let's talk about serverless. I think this diagram is very common, so I have to come on the Amazon websites only. These are the serverless. There are many serverless are there. Technology like API gateway, where you can have develop the REST-based API. You can use the CloudFront for the building the caching network. I call it as a serverless because my definition of serverless is a little different. When I say serverless, right, it not always server has to be there. When I serverless, where I don't need to be wake up at night to up my server. So by using the caching also called CloudFront work like similar way. You just put another CloudFront in front of your load balancer or EC2 machine and you relax it. Even if your EC2 also right, you have a cache content and it can serve properly for some period of time till the cache content is there. That's how the serverless, I defined it. Then we have a S3 bucket. I'll count S3 bucket also serverless because there is no server actually. It can serve your static content. It can serve your storage file very, very easily. Then DynamoDB, RDS are their database. Amazon SNS, that is the notification management services where you can create your event-driven architecture. I'll explain in my architecture how you can use the SNS to build event-driven architectures to build any product. Then SQs are there where you can use the queue mechanism to send them messages, send an email, you can push in the queue and the queue can keep processing based on the time or prompt like that. Then event bridge to define the CloudWatch rules where you can define the cron scheduling part of your machine. And the logical layer is like Lambda and the AWS functions. These are the kind of AWS serverless technology which AWS provided. There are many others are there, but we'll talk about only few here. So what exactly serverless provides here? Why any of starter founder or any new product builder company should focus on the serverless while building the MVP, right? These are the three factors are to be considered: speed, agility, and learn. Because why is speed? Because it helps you to deliver the fast. How can it help you? Now, to build a Lambda code, what is exactly required? Do you require MVP knowledge, MVC knowledge, like micro model view control knowledge? Don't require for the build along. You can write a small script in the Python, Golang, or Node.js or .NET in a Lambda, just deploy it. That can be just CRUD operations also. You don't require much knowledge. It's like just simply writing the one program. Okay, the Lambda gives that powerful things to be do on that part. You can write a very small code and deliver it fastly, just packages and deliver it and the Lambda can be run. It can attach to the API gateway and API gateway is ready with the REST API also. Versus, if you look at the other side of that, if you're building a normal ECS cluster or EC2 cluster, you have to define all the REST endpoint, then load balancers will be there, then you have to connect it everything. Lot of the things are there. But serverless provide a lot of the speedy option. Just plug and play model base. That's how the serverless work on the speed basis. And obviously, it gives the agility. To deliver the iteration by iterations, you can do that. You don't need to wait for the deployment cycle to be done that. Because a Lambda deployment can easily done by. You don't need a CI/CD tools for serverless to adapt it. See, it's a best practice to use it, but to launch your MVP or build your MVP, you don't require to follow all the CI/CD or DevOps practices at the first start itself. You can just build your packages, Lambda packages, and deploy it, iterate by multiple way of changing that, and that's how you can do it. And the learn. So learn part is a very important part here because at iteration by iteration, you get to know, as I mentioned earlier, right, from the customer feedback, okay, this is something is missing there. This I can add it, or some code are missing it, which I can add it, or some security layer is missing it, which you can add it. These are the things which you can do it by using the serverless technology. So these are the pillar of the AWS serverless technology, like speed, agility, and learn. Now look at the cost factor. That is the important part of like the title says that how lesser cost, right? The cost factor of the AWS serverless. I will not talk about all the AWS services cost factor, only talk about the use cases study, which I'm going to talk about only that part, and I'll show you guys also how it can be save your cost. So this is Lambda. Lambda is a free tier, include the 1 million free requests per month. Do you believe 1 million requests free per month? So if you have even CRUD API or any kind of API like in your application process or any appointment application anywhere, right? If you don't have a database, consider example, if you don't have a database, you are just writing a data into the S3 bucket and into a JSON file, you need to pay anything, zero bills. Okay, that's how the Lambda can help you on that part. Because when you're building an MVP, how many customers you will be there? 100, thousands, 1 lakh? It cannot cross the 1 million in the one shot, right? We are not a Flipkart or Amazon where the big billion will happen and will cross 1 million in one shot, right? So that's how Lambda has a beauty to help you that limit up to 1 million. Just give a focus on that. Up to 1 million, we have a free request per month. So in that way, I'll talk about the one use case also. While you're building the product, right? We have built one Lambda. That Lambda was some kind of functionality to write data into Google Sheet. And that was using by the customer end also and using the back end also. Slowly over a period of time, we found that in billing, that one Lambda is costing much, other Lambda is zero. So what we have thought, we have divided that Lambda into 2 Lambda. Because per Lambda is 1 million requests is free. So if I divide, if it's going to more than 1 million requests, if I'm getting a 2 million request to the 1 Lambda, I'm getting the cost for the Lambda. I'll divide that Lambda into 2. I'll segregate that Lambda into 1 is the customer focus and 1 is the backend focus. So I can divide that request into 1 million, 1 million. So 1 million plus 1 million, 0, 0. Like that my bill will become a 0. So accordingly, that's way we have divided the particular Lambda where we can segregate the functionality, segregate the role base also, but code base is same. Only the 2 different Lambda. There is no harm in having a multiple different Lambda because the beauty of serverless, beauty of microservice architecture is right? See, if you feeling that this particular Lambda or particular functions is getting load, divide it there, distribute the loads. That's how it works. So beauty of microservices is keep a micro work to that particular Lambda. If you feel load is increasing, divide. Okay, then you will be having a very good billing part also. Now next is SNS. SNS has the first 1 million Amazon SNS requests per month are free. So after that you will have a $0.50 per million requests. I'm telling here $0.50 per million requests, not around 100 million, 100,000 or 1 lakh requests. Do you believe it? So when you are doing a MVP, you can't cross immediately the 1 million requests, right? So here also you can save the cost. Okay, how SNS can be used, that also I explain in the next architecture diagram part. Next is the API gateway. API gateway also similar kind of model, pay only for the API calls you received. If you don't use it, you will not receive any calls. So if your MVP is in the market, but you don't have a customer, right, you will not pay anything. But in Virtues, if you have EC2 running it or EKS running it, right, you will end up paying it for server which is not using at all. No customers are coming on your website, still you are paying it. And that's how we have to use that API gateway base. So where we can use the API gateway REST base and static bucket kind of things, the protocol. Next is the SQS. Here you can have you can store with the Amazon SQS free. All the customer can make 1 million Amazon SQS requests free for each month. Here also we need. I think Amazon, when you are building the AWS service, right, they have kept like that. Everything is 1 million above, give it, pay. But below the 1 million, free. I think so there might be some story behind the 1 million. We have to catch the AWS employee here and we can find out, okay, why only 1 million. But that's help you and relieve you to build an MVP. So focus on the fact about the costing part which I talk about here and try to utilize while you're building your product. I'll make sure that, see, you will not end up paying this more money on that. You can save a lot of money on that. I'll tell you the story on that part where we were building a product in the company name called NAV Finance. That is a fintech based app. It is for the business loan application for the MSME segment For 2 years, we only pay the money for the RDS uses. Can you believe it? And after 1 year, we were having almost 600 Lambda running on it. And the customers almost around 10 to 20K per month to a customer. We are serving almost 4 crore disbursal every month. And company was profitable, company not paying anything for the infrastructure. That's what the amazing thing which serverless, Lambda, and this AWS Serverless gives back. So this is kind of all summary where you can focus on if you want to take a picture on this part, anything available on the AWS website also. Nothing like that which I have kept it from our AWS websites also. Now let's look at the case study. That's the most interesting part. What case study we have built here? So in that, as I told, right, it was a fintech startup. So fortunately, that startup doesn't exist now, but it was a good tech stack, which many companies has wanted to acquire the tech stack. That's why we built tech stack. I will always say thanks to the founders of the co-CTO of the company. So the company process was like loan application process was there, where the customer used to come there, apply for the loan with filling the loan amount, eligibility amount, adding the PAN details, and then based on the loan application is to fetch the data from the CIBIL bureau data, check the credibility, and based on the credibility ask for the other KYC document like Aadhaar, bank statement, his business details and everything, all this part. And after this business entity part, right, the backend process used to review the applications, and based on the review of the application, his credibility, like the way you go for vehicle loan or the home loan, right? It check your eligibility and it gives you the, this is your approved amount, you accept the approved amount, send the agreement also. So in the whole loan processes, we have built eKYC also using the Aadhaar-based eKYC where digital signature was there. So this was and after approval also, it got disbursal using the automation through the bank directly. So nowhere there was a manual step was there except the credit check. Otherwise, everything was automated by using this serverless technology. That's the power of the serverless technology. This is a loan process one. There was dialer integration was there. So they used to do almost a daily 1 lakh to 2 lakh calls by the sales people to have a kind of to get the loans lead, to get a more follow up with the customer on that part, right? So we used to have a dialer integration. So dialer has the PHP based dialer, but we are using the lead management software that is called Salesforce, right? So we have to get that lead into Salesforce. For that also we have used the AWS Lambda to pump that data from the PHP based server, that is a local hosted server on the on-premises, to push the data into the RDS by using the Lambda. There also used to run the cron every 5 minutes. So can you imagine that they are doing a 1 lakh to 2 lakh calls on per day basis, and all for every 5 minutes we used to pump that data into the RDS. Still we did not pay anything on that part. So this dialer integration model also built on the serverless part, and we have saved a lot of money. Then the back office operation. The back office operation is like document scanning, checking the validation of document, credit checks part, and final disbursement, and then storing into the final document also. A lot of back office was there because as per the finance or RBI compliances, a lot of things still we can automate it, but still need to follow a lot of compliances. So for that also we have built a digital back office operation. There also we use all serverless technology. So everything from start to end we have built using the serverless, that is a Lambda base. Now we'll talk about the fact about this case study. When we launched the MVP, right, almost 30 Lambda was there. Only 30 Lambda. It reached later to 600 Lambda. Okay, 600 Lambda also it is reached, but that was, if you calculate, as I said, right, we have divided the Lambda. If one Lambda is getting the multiple load, divide them, make it twice Lambda. Likewise we are doing. So 30 Lambda was there. Only one RDS. So in across this one, we are only paying for RDS and the Route 50, that is a $0.018, maybe 100 rupees per month. That's only we have to pay. So when we launch products in the market, we only pay for RDS and Route 53. And that's how I call as a lesser cost. I did not say it's zero cost, because Route 53 only if you register one domain, you will end up paying 100 rupees per month for just for domains. That you have to pay. There is no way to get free of the cost. an RDS is required. But that RDS also you can replace if you're building a basic products, right? If you don't want to store any multiple data, just want to trial, right? You can use the JSON-based data and dump into the JSON to S3 bucket also. There also you can save the cost. So if you want to get rid of RDS cost also. So one RDS was there, 30 API gateways pointing to 30 Lambda, 2 SQS queue was there, one for the email notification, one for SMA notification. Everything was event driven. When my job is done, I will point to the next one. So this Lambda was pushing the data into SQS queue. Once they're done, they wanted to send us communication. They will just push the Lambda details to the SQS queue. Another Lambda was listening to the SQS queue, which will listen to the SQS queue and push the communication, email communication, SMS communication to customer. That's the 2 SQS queue. One Route 53 for domain. In same domain, we used to have a backoffice.nafn.com, then admin. Everything is subdomain. So AWS doesn't charge for subdomain. It's only charged for the host entry. That's why I call it the one entry here. 3 CloudFront for the back office, dialer integrations, and the main domain. S3 bucket was 3 here, 1 for hosting the Angular code. So we are using the Angular code here because it's a SPA base, where if you don't use the PHP base or other server-based technology, right, you don't need to have host websites on the EC2 machine. You can host a website on S3 bucket where you will not pay much amount. It is based on the storage only, and how hardly your JavaScript code will be there. 1 MB, 2 MB, 100 MB max to max, right? Still you can't pay, no need to pay on that part. So S3 bucket, 1 bucket for the hosting the Angular code. There is back office code and there is a front end code also, like the customer end code and the back code. There are 2 Angular code was there, and 1 bucket for the storing all the KYC document, all the bank statement. There also it is like how hardly it cannot cross the trillion TB data, nothing like that. So there also we can save the cost. And 10 SNS was there. 10 SNS was for to build the event-driven architecture. Okay, why 10 SNS? Like when my job done, I'll push ball to there. I will be standing mode. So that will go to the SNS. Whoever listening to SNS, they will start their job. That SNS might be listened by multiple Lambdas also. 1 Lambda will go to the next step, 1 Lambda go to the parallel processing, like sending the communication. So when I'm sending, I'm collecting the data from the front end. My job is not to send the communication. That job is a different Lambda. That will listen to the SQS queue. So I will just push, okay, my job is done. I'm collecting the data, I'll push it to the next one. Do it your next job. That's how the event-driven things work. And accordingly, that's how we have built SNS 10. Later point of view, it bring to around maybe 2025, because the way we start growing the products, we have to add more and more steps in that. Later we got the KYC, later we got the bank statement verification, everything is. So every stage we keep adding the different SNS part. This is kind of the figure fact about that case study. Now let's talk about the architecture diagram. I have not put the big picture of the architecture diagram. Very simple, I try to keep it. So here, like customer are coming into the domain, it will go to, I hope it's visible. Yeah. Okay. It will go to Route 53 first. Route 53 has host entry for the CloudFront. Then CloudFront will have point to the S3 bucket. Okay, due to the caching also it's faster. So another benefit of having a serverless technology and serverless using the S3 bucket, right? Your website load much faster than normal server. Okay, that's you have to make sure that. That's why you should go with the SPA model, that is single page application, Angular, React, or Vue.js, whatever the technology you are going to use that and build a REST-based API. That will save a lot of cost. Because for hosting the Angular, you don't need a server. You can use AWS Amplify also. You can use the S3 bucket. Once you go to the S3 bucket, it will start pushing data using by API gateway. Then the actual backend work will start. That's why I divided this work to the backend side. That is the event-driven architecture. Till that time, it was the front end. Once the API gateway start, it will go to the 1 Lambda. This Lambda will start pushing into the different SNS part. It can be multiple SNS. So example of that, there is a stage called register. After register, submit an applications. After the application, pull the CBIL. After the pull CBIL, get the KYC document. After the get KYC document, then send the approval amount. These are the stages, right? So each stages will have a different SNS one, and each SNS will have their individual role. So beauty of microservice is do your own work and keep it the other work to the rest on the Lambda. That's how it works. So we'll have a multiple SNS on part. Each SNS will listen by one Lambda, can be a multiple Lambdas also. Accordingly, that will work it. And here we'll have a CloudWatch rule to listen the one Lambda, which always be listened to the SQS queue. And SQS queue, whatever data is built there, to send SMS or email. So we have kept it very like segregated work role for each Lambda. So that way, the code was less for each Lambda, and the role of each Lambda was less. So we can distribute it, divide the load on each Lambda, where we will not cross the 1 million requests per month for each Lambda, and will not pay any single money for it. Then the here SA bucket for the documentation. So as I mentioned, right, there are 3 buckets was there. I mentioned only the front end part. The similar kind of will be back office also. And then here we'll have a SA bucket to store the document part. So whatever the document going to be uploaded by the customer from the UI, it will going to be loaded through the Lambda and store it to the S3 bucket. This is like a simple diagram, architecture diagram for the case study. I think there might be different use cases from the audience also, there how to save the lesser money, but it is from my experience point of view, where we build MVP using the serverless with a lesser cost. And that's how it ended the sessions. So what's the conclusion of session? I have put a lot of wording here. Okay, it's like it will give a quality, it has an Route 53, feedback, effort, S3, startup, scalable, MVP, Lambda, building, cost, agile, improvisation, microservice, faster, SQS, SNS, gateway, API, sharing, serverless, effective, and not to forget, important part is a learning side. The way you build MVP, you always keep learning and keep improvisation. That's how this use case study ends here. I hope you like this session. An important quote of this diagram I put it. I got this diagram. I got inspiration from previous Pune, because this was my second talk on the Pune. Last year I did a first talk, the physical one, where the Mohapatra from the AWS has used nice image to explain the code. Instead of putting the code in a simple way, right? Put the exactly way. I use a similar kind of thing. This is a construction going on that they're putting the planes and all the base of the image, right? As you cannot build a house without laying the foundation. You can't create a successful product without building the MVP. So MVP is a success mantra for the building your product. Thank you. This is about my portfolio. So you can connect avinashdavi.com. Here all the social connects are there. I'm pretty much active on social media. You can find me on any of the social media, Twitter, Stack Overflow, LinkedIn, okay? And internetkatta.com is my blog, where I writing the blog from last 12 years. I share all the learning, what I failure also, everything I try to share, whatever from my experience point of view. Thank you. So my tagline is, I'm doing started a YouTube content from 1 year or so. So my tagline is like, learn together and grow together. I don't want to grow only by me. I want to grow with you guys. And that's why I'm here to share my experience, where it can help you to build an MVP using the serverless with a lesser cost. Thank you.
That was nice actually, but first session also and this session also something, you are building applications, some security is missing there.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll tell you the security why is missing there. Because when you are building an MVP, right, as I tell you, right, focus on the core features. Because when you're building MVP, you might have a one customer, you might have a 10 customers also, you might have 100 customers. You don't know. Over a period of time, you have to grow. So in my use case study, we have built a VPC architectures, VPC full network in the second year. When we cross starting and having a compliances to the RBI, then we have built a VPC part. That's why I did not mention the security here, because it's purely focused on the MVP side. It's like 1 year of duration when you're building the products. But your point is right, every infrastructure needs a security, but that has the right time to start with it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for briefing us with your expertise and insights. Now I would like to call Zishan to felicitate Avinash, sir.
Thank you.